When you were a child, what were you afraid of? Thinking back, I'm sure many would have similar responses. The monster they believed lived under their bed. The ghoul they thought was residing in the basement. Maybe just the dark itself. Yet, as childhood leaves us and we're graced by the joy of becoming adults, the knowledge that more often than not, people themselves can be far scarier in our warped little world hits us like a slap in the face. I'm JJ, and here are 5 true creepy encounters from Reddit. Number 1. Crazy Red by Wandering One. This happened just yesterday. On Fridays, we have a family tradition. We go to our parents' house, all of us females, with our 7 children, and eat fast food together. Yesterday, I didn't have a vehicle because it was getting some work done. Anyway, long story short, I couldn't go pick up the food, so I stayed back at the house with the kids while my sisters and mum did pick up. The older kids were all playing outside with my dad, so I was inside with the twins, a 1-year-old girl and boy. The twins were pretty restless, as little ones generally are, so I thought, since my doctor recommended exercise due to a heart condition, that I would load up the twins in their double stroller and take them for a walk. The rest of the kids were deeply involved in a game of Everybody Is It tag, so they had absolutely no interest in joining the twins and I for our walk. So we walked 2 blocks over to the schoolyard, and the first 2 blocks were great. We saw a couple of people with dogs, and my nephew just loves them. Anyway, we passed a street that is kind of rough and continued on. Suddenly, there's this woman with bright crayon red hair who starts following us. At first, I thought she's probably just going in the same direction. No big deal, right? So we turned down a few side streets and she's still following us. We even did a couple of loops around the block so I could be sure. Then I hear her start loudly talking to herself, and she's going on about how I stole her babies, the twins, and how she might have to kill me to get them back. I sped up and came to the bottom of a big hill. Due to my heart condition, it's not recommended that I overdo it, but it was either go up this ginormous hill and risk myself, or turn around and walk back towards her. Of course, I chose the hill. So up the hill I went, pushing a double stroller as fast as I could manage, completely ignoring the chest pains. She is still behind me, getting louder and louder, about taking my niece and nephew, and killing me because I didn't deserve them, and that I was a bad mum to them and she would be better. This is like 4 p.m. in the afternoon in broad daylight, and there was absolutely nobody else around, which is odd. Finally, when we are just over the halfway point, she stopped following and just stood there screaming at me that she had died on the cross so those babies could live, and how her death was painful, and I should turn around and bring those babies down so they could worship her, because she could no longer climb the mountain. Let's just say I ran, pushing that stroller the rest of the way up that hill, even though I was pretty sure I'd drop dead from the pain in my chest. Once we were up the hill, we finally met someone with a dog, and I told him what had just happened, so he walked with us for a block or so until we were both sure that Crazy Red was no longer following. Turns out that I wasn't the first person she had done that to. In fact, in the winter, the police had been called on her by the school because she was doing the same thing at the school, causing them to go on lockdown. She was off her meds and screaming at the kids that she had died for them. So, Crazy Red child stalker, please let's never ever meet again. Number 2. Crazy Woman by Ulrika Nashama. This happened about 6 to 7 years ago. My husband and I are driving back from Michigan as we had been to visit my parents, and by the time we get into the remote back area of Ohio, it's dark. We always make sure our doors are locked because we aren't stupid. Anyway, we make a quick stop to use the restrooms, stretch and get something to drink. We get back on the road, and as we're going along, we slow down to stop for a stop sign, and this woman walks out right in front of us, and I slam on the brakes to keep from hitting her. We sit there for a minute, collecting ourselves and thinking, what the fuck? She knocks on the passenger side window where my husband is sitting, and I'm telling him, don't roll it down. Let's just get the F out of here. But him being the kind-hearted type, rolls down his window. She tells us that she's been walking for hours and that her car broke down, she can't get a hold of her daughter, and that she has no money and needs $50 for a cab. He tells her to hold on and rolls up the window, and I'm telling him, no, you've got to be nuts. Do not let her in this truck. And he gives me the, but she needs help speech. Hate me all you like, but I learned the hard way to never trust people, especially strangers. And I told him I don't give a shit if she's bleeding on the ground, she is not getting in my truck. He guilts me into letting her in. Now, I'm driving a Ford F-150 and there's only one seat, so we're all crammed in, and I ask her where she's going. First she says to a store, then she says she needs to find a cab but she has no money, and can we give her $50? I'm silently telling my husband, like hell we're giving her money, as we're driving, but he relents and says yes. We drive and she's telling us all kinds of stories about her and her daughter, how she needs to get home and that her daughter is 16 and home alone, that it's about 2 hours away in Ohio. The more we drive, the more it changes. I ask about her daughter, and this time she's in her late 20s and has a few kids and is in Kentucky. I said, but I thought she was 16, home alone and 2 hours away in Ohio. To which she says, oh, that's my younger daughter. It's my adult daughter I'm going to see. Okay. That makes no damn sense because she said she's just come from Kentucky. We find an ATM and, thankfully, it's broken. We push on to find another, and the more she talks, the weirder she gets. She tries cozying up to my husband and sweet-talking him, and he is oblivious to women hitting on him, so she moves on to me and I refuse to accept it by constantly changing the subject. Then it gets stranger. She says, are you two married? We reply yes. Then she says, oh, that's good, because I would have had to call Jesus down to smite you if you were living in sin. We're both thinking, what the fuck? Then she says, you two are very nice Christian people, and we both say that we're not Christian. She gets upset by this and starts spouting the Bible at us, and my hubby is retorting back to her. We finally reach another ATM, and this entire time the hubby and I have been communicating through signals that we need to get this nutjob out of the car. We pull up and he says, I need to get out of the car to get to the ATM, and she says, just have your wife pull up and use it. He says, no one uses my card but me. Then she says, have your wife get out. He replies, her door is broken, only the passenger door works. A lie, of course, but whatever we need to do to get her out. She gets out and he grabs the door to put it closed. She grabs the door and starts screaming at us as she's trying to get back in. He says to her, no, your story is full of holes and doesn't add up. She pulls out this knife, assuming like a switchblade, and the hubby shoves her and I peel out of the bank parking lot with the door still open as he shuts it and locks it. She chases us, screaming, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I floor it, pushing the gas pedal to the floor, and we're doing like 120, and I don't let up for 4 miles until the hubby is screaming, slow down, you're going to kill us. I slow. I am shaking, part due to anger, part due to being freaked the F out. We made it home safely, but crazy lady that tried to rob us and stab my husband? Let's not ever meet again. Number 3. Late Night Run by Kazmir Yeet. So, this is among the scariest things to ever happen to me in my entire life. To start, I'll set the scene. This occurred in Florida about 3 to 4 years ago when I was about 21 or 22. I'm a small dude, 5'6"-ish, but I'm relatively muscular and fit. The city I lived in was a pretty decently big city as far as Florida goes. I had lived there for about 10 years, so I had become pretty damn comfortable there. I worked a lot of nights at the time, mostly 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. shifts. I lived on the outskirts of the city at the time, so needless to say it was less busy and much more low-key. At the time I was preparing to join the military, so fitness was a pretty big priority, despite the long shifts I was working. I would wake up late, head straight to work, get home, relax, and then run whenever I was ready. This also proved an effective way to dodge the horrible Florida heat and humidity and allow for a more enjoyable run. So one particular night I had just finished closing up my work, food service, and was ready to head home after a long-ass day. I was really into GTA 5 online at the time, so I was dying to get home and play. Due to being off the next day, I played for longer than I usually would before my late-night run, and was almost tempted by my friends to just skip my run just one time. I eventually felt the guilt overcome me and decided to get up and go at about 2:30 a.m. to get this damn run out of the way. So as always, I put on my neon green Nike shirt, a reflective armband that holds my phone, my running shoes, also reflective, and my running shorts. I stretch in my driveway as always, then I grab my water bottle and start the mile or so walk away from my house that I take to get to the back road where I do my run. I arrive, place my water bottle in the bush by the dimly lit church on the corner, and I prepare to start going. Now, during my actual run, I would only use the 2 primary back roads. I would run down one road, which was notable for having nothing but trees and fences on either side, take a right, and then run down this dimly lit road with a few houses tucked away in the woods for about another mile. I would turn around after that, and after about 4 miles running, I would enjoy my cool-down walk back home. Anyways, my run begins. The weather is cool and windy, and I'm about half a mile down the empty road when I hear a car approach from behind. It passes me at about 40 miles per hour. While seeing a vehicle is somewhat rare in this area at this time of night, the vehicle, what seemed to be a Dodge Charger, was going at about 15 below the speed limit, and didn't strike me as unusual, as there is always a risk of hitting a deer in this part of town. I keep moving, and as the car is about 100 yards away from me, it comes to an immediate halt. This immediately sends shivers down my spine, as there is literally nothing on this road worth stopping for. I stop running and just patiently watch the car. I squat down near the bushes on the side of the road to lower my profile as I watched. The passenger side door opened, and a tall, dark figure stood next to the open door for a few moments, peering in my direction, but I was hidden by the darkness. It occurred to me that my presence might be the reason for the stop, as they may be suspicious of someone running down the road this late. I quickly threw this idea out of my head, as I was very obviously wearing running clothing designed to be seen late at night, and it would be absurd for anyone to think I was up to trouble in my bright-ass outfit. After another minute or so, the passenger got back into the car and the sedan suddenly whipped around and started speeding in my direction. The very instant the vehicle started to whip around, I rolled from my squatting position into the bushes and stayed as still as possible. The car passed me and came to a halt about 10 to 15 feet in the other direction. I could see them turn their high beams on and turn back around in the middle of the road and start to slowly creep down the road at about 5 to 10 miles per hour and turn their lights off completely. After they pass me once again, I poke my head out a little just to see where they are. The car approaches the turn at the end of the road and turns right and stops there, only to flash their high beams down the dark road with the houses. Needless to say, I'm sufficiently creeped out and hoping it's just an unmarked police officer trying to talk to me, but most police vehicles in my area have spotlights, so searching for me with the high beams would make no sense. The car turns around again as I pop myself back into the bush and proceeds to once again turn the lights off. Then the scariest part happened. I hear the engine start to loudly rev, and suddenly the Charger is shooting down the road nearing 90 miles per hour, headlights off and all. It whips around and does the same thing again back in the direction of the dark road, and in a panic I get my phone out to call 911. I can't leave the bush without risking getting hit, and I'm honestly mortified. As soon as I get ready to dial, the Charger turns into the dark road, flashes their high beams in another attempt to find me, and disappears down that road. I climb out of the bush and make a break in the other direction, desperately trying to get home. I sprinted down the road faster than I've ever moved in my life. As I approach the church, I start to feel more safe, so I slow to a brisk walk and call 911 to report what had happened. I spoke to an operator who told me to try and stay put and hidden, as there wouldn't be an officer in the area for another 15 to 20 minutes. I hustle over to the bush to hide, still on the phone with the operator, when I realise my water bottle is completely gone. This confirms the suspicion that I was being deliberately followed, and whoever was following me likely had ill intentions. I stayed until the police arrived, gave my report, and was given a ride home. Needless to say, I started running during the day before work and never took that background again. To the people in that vehicle that were likely trying to hurt and or kill me, let's not meet. Number 4. A Small Mistake Saved Us, by N. Brox. Some background to set this up should help. It was about 10 or 11 years ago, shortly after my father had passed and my mother had remarried. My dad was not a great person, and my mother fell into another abusive and controlling marriage after meeting my dirtbag of a stepfather. One of my older sisters, whom I've confirmed this with, had moved back home after getting pregnant and leaving college. This all happened in a relatively short period of time, 3 to 4 years. At the time, the game RuneScape was extremely popular, at least with my parents, and they had started to talk to people from all over. Herein lies their mistake. My stepfather apparently made friends with this guy named Tony from Britain, and they had started talking via email. I don't know 100% of the details, but my mother talked to him as well, and he had mentioned that he would love to travel to the US. My stepfather is a complete idiot and had arranged for this guy to stay at our house for a week, with my mother agreeing, since she essentially did whatever he said. So, after a few months, they picked him up at the airport and brought him to our house. This guy was strange. He flew all the way to Massachusetts and never left our house. He hung out in the spare bedroom most of the time he was there, and from what I remember, he and my parents didn't really do anything that a tourist might want to do or see. They may have gone into Boston one day. He also had a very strange attraction to my sister Kay, the one who just came back. He kept making comments about how pretty she was, and was just generally very awkward around her, to the extent that it made most of us uncomfortable. I have 3 other brothers and 3 other sisters, so at the time 6 of us kids were living at home. Overall, the experience of having this guy visit just seemed really weird, but he eventually went home and nothing really came of it. That is, until he tried to come visit again. Now, I'm not entirely sure how the visa process works. I personally have had a work visa to go to Kuwait, but I have never tried getting travel visas to the US. I live here. What I do know is that if you have a work visa, you have to have a job. This is where Tony messed up, and thankfully he did. I assume he couldn't get another travel visa, so he got a work visa to come visit a second time a few months later. However, he didn't have a job lined up in the US, so when he flew in, he got stopped at customs. Upon questioning him, custom agents got suspicious and started going through his stuff. That's when they found his diary. In it were detailed plans about how he would kill our family and abduct my sister Kay so that they could live together and be married. He explained that she would be forced to love him and he deserved her to love him. During the time he spent at our house, he had detailed our patterns and schedules. He scoped out the house and apparently had everything down to the last detail fleshed out. I know all of this because the FBI came and talked to us about him while he was detained in the US. The terrifying part is that this guy was one lazy customs agent away from trying to execute his plan and causing a lot of horror. Thankfully, the agent was doing their job properly and they found out Tony's intentions. So, don't ever invite people that you meet online to your house without some serious vetting, and Tony, let's not ever meet again. Number 5. Stalker in the Mask by Fantapants42. When I was 17, I moved to college 2 hours away from home and took residence in the dorms on campus. The dorms were not run through the school, but through a management company. There were a lot of safety problems in the dorms as a result of this. Assaults, ODs, drugs, shootings right outside, etc. I'm a 100-pound female, so I always watched out for serious situations around me. Everything was great. I had some awful roommates, but I mostly was left alone. One day in September, I was leaving for class early in the morning when I spotted a condom taped to my name tag on the door. It had a note that said, "Call me, XOXO," with some random phone number. I told the RAs and nothing came of it. I just thought it was some random prank pulled by one of the guys on the floor. Things went south with my roommates, mostly because of my night terrors scaring them, even though I'd warned them before we even agreed to be roommates. So I was moved into a 2-bedroom dorm with my new roommate, Jay. We each had our own room. After a week of living there, I started noticing that things were appearing in the living room while we were sleeping. I asked Jay about it and she vehemently denied it was her. One day we noticed that the lock on the front door did not properly lock. If you pulled on the lock and twisted the handle at the same time, the door would come open. Around the same time, I started getting Snapchats of inappropriate things, vague threats and offers for great sex. I would get ones that would say things like, "You look great today with that specific article of clothing I was wearing." I filed a report to the dorms to get the lock fixed, but it took 4 months, 8 complaints, threat of legal action, and my friend D yelling at them. We got our door fixed, but the presence still appeared outside of the door with notes for me. I was still receiving Snapchats, but I moved out of the dorms and into an apartment with my then boyfriend. The Snapchats continued. Then I started getting calls at my work. I worked for the dean's office of my college and I was in charge of answering phones. Every day I would get 3 or more calls from randomly generated numbers. I discovered it was through apps like Viber and Skype after I reported it to the police and they investigated. I would answer the phone, "CLAS, Dean's office, this is Fantapants, how may I help you?" I would hear heavy breathing for a few seconds, then they would hang up. I thought it was just some 12-year-old pranking our office until my co-worker got a call. She answered with her name, and the person on the line asked if they could speak with me. Thinking it was one of the deans that I had been working with, she forwarded it to my phone. I answered, and I received the same heavy breathing and hang-up. I reported it to my boss. She did nothing. One of the deans overheard the conversation and reported it to the Title IX. Oh boy, talking to them was a big mistake. After the meeting with them, the threat started getting worse and this person found me in my new apartment. One day in December, I was dog-sitting 2 wonderful dogs who hated other dogs and would bark at them on sight. It was around 11 p.m. and I decided to take them out before bed. We get outside, and to the right of me is a bunch of thick trees that are hard to see through. I start to take the girls to the grass on the left, and they start growling and barking at something in the trees. Thinking it's another dog, I try to pull them away, but they will not budge. I glance over, and out of the trees comes a tall man, but the weird thing is he is wearing a Michael Myers-like mask. He starts rushing towards me. The dogs get between me and him, and he stops. I run up the stairs behind me into the apartment as he is disappearing into the trees again. Stupidly, I don't call the police, but I see him one more time before I move to my new apartment. Things are quiet for a while. My boyfriend and I break up, and I spend the first few days in the new apartment alone. Come to find out that the window can be accessed from the ground doesn't lock. One morning I wake up. Everything seems normal. I check the mirror to do my hair for work. I have a bald spot. My head was shaved in the middle of the night. I find my hair tied up in knots in an envelope. I immediately call the police. They do an investigation, find the window was broken but can't find anything to figure out who it was that came into my apartment. They asked me to compile a list of everything that was missing, and the only other thing gone than my hair was 3 pairs of dirty underwear. I have photos of the hair and bald spot if anyone is interested. An investigation finds no one. I have since moved. I no longer answer phones at my work, and I keep bear spray next to my bed at all times. And there we have our 5 true creepy encounters. Our world really is a terrifying place, and it seems to be getting worse by the day. I personally believe that true evil is out there and can walk among us. I, however, also know that many people are plagued by mental health issues that are going ignored and unhelped. Even in this day and age, things are all too easily swept under the carpet, even major things that affect a person's health and mind. It's time to make a change. Please let us know what you thought of this video in the comments, and we're always looking for new content, so drop us your true story on our subreddit. All links are down below. If you've not already done so, subscribe and be sure to ding that bell to receive notifications so you never miss a moment with me. For now, however, JJ out.